being able to come in and know, let me figure out what your music tastes are, right? That you might incorporate later. It was the same thing that I was hearing from this hip hop giant, especially at that point. Man, you here with us. You caring more about me now. I became a bigger fan in that moment. So I love that, again, you're taking that in. And then there was another piece that you start to talk about that reminds me of another OG who I was able to share a stage with. Robert Rice, OG professor at Berkeley.
But he worked in the Obama administration.
Yeah, all of the different administrations he's been on. He's so big that he's actually in the episode of The Simpsons. We got to see this movie. He has a documentary out now.
The Last Class.
It just dropped. And it was interesting for me to watch from the lens of how him in his last year of teaching, how what he did to start his career and how he was with them, he kind of changed everything. He realized like some of the information was too much for those students, and how he started to adapt his style more to the needs of the students and to, again, the students being on the phone, they can get information in so many different ways. And it was impressive for me to see someone that highly accomplished, right, that educated in his last year still realize, it's about them students. So to the point that you made about, hey, they got something else going on. Let me assess this. You bringing your own lived experience of being a student, you know what I mean, and being able to adapt. Again, I truly appreciate you doing that because I don't think enough. So I think that that's part of some of your style too, of being able to put myself in their shoes, which a lot of the power structure, you talked about patriarchy, a lot of the professors are not like, you're going to learn this. Right. You're going to learn the way that I learned, right? Versus you coming in and making a better experience for them and a true learning experience at Berkeley. So again, hat tip, because I see what you're doing and I see what you're doing across so many different, levels with it. But I didn't mean to cut you off either.
No, I was going to bring out, Robert's documentary, The Last Class too, because what it reminded me of in his documentary and what you just spoke of is your favorite teacher. Everybody, if you think back to when you were in grade school or high school, everyone has a favorite teacher or counselor or someone and that they confided in that maybe passed them Cheetos during breaking period or they hung out after school, right? The favorite teacher comes to mind. And the theme behind it is being able to adjust and leaving space for the student to also take ownership of the class and to make it their own experience. And I love that you talk about frameworks. And I know a little bit about your curriculum as well, which is also valuable to talk about. You talk about 2 books that you incorporate in your curriculum, which I don't think are assigned in every classroom. These 2 books can be used for many different fields. Can you talk about what those 2 books are and then why they're important?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Those 2 books, the first one is by the late Bell Hooks, All About Love. I was never an avid reader in high school and growing up. I just played Game Boy. I just couldn't read. I just never understood why people read for fun.
You didn't want to read. It's not that you couldn't. You could read.
Exactly. And especially after high school when I was reading those history pages for 2 to 3 hours, I was like, I read, but do I retain? I don't remember anything. You know what I mean? So I just remember I was going chapter through chapter and I was like, wow, it's flowing. And I couldn't put it down. And when I thought about that text, for those who haven't read All About Love, I'm sure there's so many things people who've read it can talk about. Just the dynamics of love. I think love is the most powerful theme. It ties so much music together, so much storytelling, all movie, entertainment. You find love at the root. And at the same time, I wanted to bring this text into class because as an educator, so much from Bell Hooks is how do you weaponize love? How do we use love as part of the equation to teach, to create this beloved community? And what I love about this text is she invites us to think about how have we defined love growing up as individuals. The book is actually a compilation of other quotes and stories she's gathered, which is how I feel I actually teach. So many of my quotes are actually coming from people who I've looked up to. Like my professor used to say this, Bobbie used to say this, my mom used to tell me this. And I just love her work is actually just so selfless. And when you think about the different dynamics and areas that love resides, you talk about self-love, talks about love from your parents, chosen family, platonic love, romantic love, spiritual love, divinity, all these areas where I think she can also argue that love to some extent could be the same in all of these. And I know a lot of people kind of might think like love, romance, maybe monogamy in like such an American culture. Because I love you, I actually got to put you here. And then there's this hierarchy where she argues that same love I have for being in this space is the same love that I'll give my partner, right? It's just all love. And it's confusing text sometimes because the way I integrate it with my students is like, I want you all to start this class, and it's an assessment of how you've grown to understand what love is. Because we're going to have fishbowl discussions, and love is going to be the centerpiece. But if you're using two plus different definitions of love, we're not talking about the same thing. So as a class, I need us to work towards love. But for that to happen, we have to have a shared meaning of love, if that makes sense. So she offers a definition. She actually opts from someone else, which is like kind of nurturing your spiritual growth, which could be kind of hard to define for folks who are like so objective. Spirituality is such an intangible thing. Some people think spirituality has to have a religion. You don't have to have a religion to have a spirit. But it's this sense of there is this sensibility, there's this energy. There's something that you just gotta accept that you can't like quantify. And that we all have this spirit within us.
Did you ever get pushback from parents or administration when bringing this book into your curriculum? Like, did kids go to their parents and be like, we're talking about love, and they're like, what?
You know what? Knock on wood. I mean, I'm not even teaching there anymore, but I have these shower thoughts of like everything that could go wrong teaching. I literally have it in the shower. And I've never had that. And it's actually so great because so much of the assignments is actually asking sometimes students to talk to their caregivers. One of the first assignments was to interview them for 10 minutes. And I said, yo, tell them, well, how do you define love, right? And it was so powerful to have the chance to actually have access to hear those conversations and actually to see the difference in how love is defined. You know, some people, parents have made it feel like this material thing. It's how much you buy or give. Some it's about sacrifice. Some it's about time, right? And it was so great because a lot of the feedback from parents was, wow, I feel like I'm part of their learning. And that's what we call funds of knowledge for students. The learning's beyond, I'm not going to even give these kids a textbook. The learning I need you to understand is how do you tap into these living archives whose stories actually might not be captured by dominant or prestigious institutions, and to know like what their stories are like highly credible. Like, I need you to understand that. You need to believe that. And even though I have you for a semester, that's like my philosophy. You could have someone tell you how it was like for like your parents is Filipino to grow up, or you can just ask your parents whose story you're gonna believe. And so it's the same thing with love. And it's nerve-wracking because there is talk about abuse in that book. And, you know, I had these reflections, and students would, luckily as a counselor, I have a sensibility of when I need to maybe call in like another counselor, maybe like do CPS if something is like kind of coming up. But I think a lot of students became more vulnerable about just feeling alone. A lot of their narratives that the whole group could participate in discussion about kind of mirrored my experience as a high schooler. I'm the only like Black girl in my class, and I don't feel a lot of love. Like, people are not taught. It's like the cycle has repeated. But I'm actually so grateful that these students have a place to release that. And then everyone has to respond to at least two other students, because it's not enough just to get your story out there.
Right.
You have to feel seen, right? So I said, yo, meet them with some empathy. Just tell them you're grateful that they shared that. You don't need to have a solution. It's not about solutions at this point. All about love. It's just about like, how do you feel seen, right? How do you love selflessly, and how do you like build trust so you can release that and know that you're going to be held, especially from people coming from all different backgrounds, and like especially white students. Like, can white students understand that they have a place there and they could be caretakers? I'm not here to antagonize you. I know that's what you're thinking. Ethnic studies is about centering BIPOC, and that's true. That's not the narrative that we hate you or you're not built for this work. We need you as equally as much as we need everyone else. Just gonna understand that sensibility-wise, you're gonna have to learn when to step up and step back. But a lot of it's probably going to be stepping back a lot of the time, which you might not be used to.
Right.
Right. And that was a lot of our audience and folks know we say seen, heard, and included. Sure. So that brings even the folks, sometimes white people can feel othered, right? Especially if we're talking about these things, right? But I don't want to miss out on the other text that you were saying. So bell hooks, shout out. Anybody talk bell hooks, you're a friend of mine. That's key and that's deep. But what's the other one? You were saying it's another book.
Yes, it's Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. If you don't follow Adrienne Marie Brown on Instagram, she has the funniest Instagram ever. I'm telling you. Talk about like mirroring bell hooks. All her posts on Instagram, they're just lumps, like slides of other people's content. It's rarely hers. And she actually, like, through a lot of her posts, it just emits so much joy and laughter, while also bringing to light kind of like some type of political heaviness, like also what's happening in the world. And for educators, it takes a balance of like, how do you have to make space for joy. You don't earn it. It's not something you have to work for. It's essential. You have to reserve space, and she does that so well. And I was handed this book when I was working at the Multicultural Community Center at UC Berkeley. Took me a year to actually crack it open. And Emergent Strategy, I could say like off the bat, if you're a community organizer, it's your guidebook of how to organize. But what I love is that I haven't organized protests, but as an educator, I feel so many of the tools are what teachers could use. And one of the essence of the book is just being rooted in nature. And as a city boy, someone who can't point out a plant, I have no idea. I'll kill plants. I'll take care of stuff. Like,
better get that out.
Right. Exactly. And she uses this system called biomimicry. And essentially, she gives example of all these different pieces of nature. And in order to transform this world we live in, we look to the ways those small pieces of nature interact all the time. And we have to mirror the systems that we want to build educationally, economic, all these pieces in a way that mirrors nature. And so one of my biggest takeaways, in quotes, I tell students is, what happens at the small scale will mirror the large scale. And she uses a term called fractal, which is essentially the smallest unit or symbol of something. And it just repeats itself. So when you like look at like a fern or something like that, when you look at the microscopic level, what you see at the largest scale is the same shape. And that's what we need to build. I think especially at a prestigious, like high-moving, high-paced school like I worked at, I went to, students want to be somewhere big really quickly. They want to look past, they don't want to go through all the building yourself up from the ground up. Being able
skip
to
steps.
I'm like,
AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say you can't. There's going to be a time and place for everything, but you can't skip these steps. As a seasoned educator, I would say if I saw someone who prioritizes these, I know there's someone I want to work with, right? Because you have feeling, you know what patience looks like. When I talk about plants, right? Growth happens when you walk away. You can't be building every day, every night. And what I love about this organizing books is just it's talking about how to know what your strengths are and the timing of actually knowing when you're called to use them. And that as someone growing up, I wanted to be great at everything. I still feel I have all these things I want to try, I want to be great at. And I feel like there's nuances to everything. But what I love about this organization and like leadership curriculum is it's saying that like if you're an organizer, MLK, and you're really great at speaking, right? Own it, because we're gonna need someone to give us vision. But at the same time, like the people who are fueling us with their words, they gotta rest sometimes. And then you have people who are equally as important. Who are the people that are actually gonna be out there risking their bodies on the line? That's equally as important. And what's interesting is sometimes there's a difference in value of how we see different types of leaders, right? And what I love to tell the students is you don't got to be vocal. You have a gift. When the speaker's done speaking, who are they going to come to get their fuel back up? That's what I want to do. So this text, you can read it and you can tap into it, and you never need to hold up a picket sign and like go out and protest. Protesting can look so different. Everyone has a role, and every role is essential.
Yeah. We read Anna Malika Tubbs' book Erased, and in it she also talks about we're all part of this team breaking into liberation and freedom. Everyone has their own piece, whether it's at home, but you here are talking about school and how educators have an important role to play in creating that space. You've covered a lot. You shared a lot of great ways that other future educators, not just teachers, but counselors, admins, can also incorporate into space building and belonging. Even just having your desks in a circle, right, playing their favorite music. These are ways in which people can apply, not just in the classroom, but if you work for a nonprofit, you're organizing things for the community. These are great tools that people can use.
Yeah, you've dropped a lot of gems, man. We truly appreciate, you doing that. Anything else?
Yeah, I got one rapid fire question for you. What kind of teachers and leaders do we need more of for the future?
I think maybe similar to this point, like my gut response is we need teachers who want to be there. I just got chills right now thinking about it, but the same way I can just dip when it's time to clock out. As a teacher, sometimes you feel like your parent. I don't have kids, but I also had kids. I see them as my kids. That's how I kind of reference them when I talk to other people about my work. I'm like, yo, my kids today did this. Like, I'm so proud of them. And I think my tip, like, if you want to go in this field, I know, like, people will say, like, there's some truth. You're not going to make a lot of money. And I would also say, like, you might work at a nice school like me, and you could make money too, right? And if money wasn't a thing, would you still show up to a classroom full of kids? And it's about, I think, do you want to be there? And you have to give, And I don't mean like you get handed curriculum to pass on. That's what we call the banking method by Paulo Freire, the pedagogy of oppress. In other words, just teachers aren't meant to just transfer knowledge someone else gives them to someone else. In terms of Adrienne Maree Brown and Bell Hooks, it's transformative work. You're producing knowledge. Yeah, you're going to teach them the stories from our folks. And what knowledge are we going to create together? Like, what systems are we going to imagine? So as a teacher, you got to go into a space, whether or not you think you're a creative, you have to create. You have to imagine with students a world that, like, is better than the world that you grew up in, the world that they're currently living in. And it's a hard thing because they're not going to ask that from you on your JD. But my philosophy of teaching is like, that's where most of our kids spend their time growing up, usually in a school. So if you're not pushing the boundaries to transform the world they want to live in, then like anyone can do that job, right? So find your agency and also just make space to share your story. I think in the pedagogy that Bobbie invited me to share, there's so many moments in class where I kind of just stop and I just tell them about like a time from college, a time with my friends. Because if there's one thing that helps students remember things, it's our stories. And the same way you asked me this opening question that I've like answered so many times, I love answering the same question. And I tell students, like, when you ask your parents what does love mean, my hope down the line is that you continue to ask them. That definition is going to change. You change every day, whether you believe it or not, right? That's the beauty of it. So you have to keep asking for, hey, tell me that story that you told me that one time. See the stories grow, see the stories change. But we need to keep our stories alive. And as teachers, you're storytellers.
Talking to y'all. Teachers, too. Y'all can get it, too, man.
Talk, come on.
Sure. Man, well, thank you, man. This has been a pleasure. You know what I mean? Like, no, I like it. I like it. I like it. I love it, actually. And Bobbie, thank you.
Yes, no, thank you for being here. Yanni was my first queer at UC Berkeley and my queer forever. It's so great to just see how much you've grown in your space and you've created your own world and carved your own space in this world. I think that's so beautiful to share because other people want to live that too. So thank you so much for sharing. And we will see everybody next time on Vinyl to Viral.